Commander Dongwu pressed his palms against the cold metal surface of the observation deck, watching the final human colony burn in the distance. The flames looked almost beautiful against the black of space, like dying stars that would never shine again. His research station, New Sol, drifted silently through the void, hidden behind a massive asteroid field that had kept them safe for now. "Commander, we have incoming transmissions," Lieutenant Hai-Jin called from her station. Her young face was pale, and her hands shook as she worked the controls. She had joined the crew only 6 months ago, fresh from the academy on Mars. Now, Mars was nothing but radioactive dust. The speakers crackled with desperate voices. Captain Chen from the colony ship, New Shanghai, was screaming about hull breaches. A woman from the farming world of Eden was crying for help that would never come. Children's voices mixed with the static, calling for their parents who were already dead. Dongwu closed his eyes and turned away from the display. "Cut the transmission." "Sir, they might still be alive. We could cut it." His voice was harder than he intended. Hai-Jin flinched but obeyed. The bridge fell silent, except for the quiet hum of life support systems. Dr. Minho looked up from his workstation, where dozens of screens showed empty space where human colonies used to be. His gray hair was messy, and his lab coat was stained. With coffee and sweat, he had not slept in 3 days, trying desperately to find survivors among the ruins of their civilization. "Nothing from the Outer Rim colonies," Minho reported. "The Viridian Empire's bioweapons work fast. They turn the air itself into poison. The Altarian sonic bombs shatter bones from the inside. Entire cities." He paused, his voice breaking slightly. "They planned this very carefully." On the far side of the galaxy, Captain So-Young stood on the bridge of her mining ship, Bison's Pride. Through the viewport, she could see the last transport ships from Earth limping through space, their hulls cracked in bleeding atmosphere. Emergency signals filled every channel, but there was nowhere safe to run. "Captain, the Confederation fleet is moving toward the mining stations," her first officer reported. "They're not leaving anyone alive." So-Young thought of her daughter back on Earth. Little Mei-Ling would be starting school this year. She wondered if the child had suffered, or if the end had come quickly. Da-da-da. The thought made her stomach twist. With pain that felt like physical poison. "Take us deeper into the void," she ordered. "Full power to the engines. We need to disappear. But Captain, the other miners are already dead." She turned to face her crew, all 12 of them staring at her with frightened eyes. "We go dark. No signals, no transmissions, no lights. We become ghosts." The Bison's Pride turned away from the dying colonies and flew toward the empty space between galaxies, where nothing lived and nothing could follow. Back on New Sol, Commander Dongwu gathered his remaining crew in the main conference room. 23 people sat around the metal table, all that remained of a research team that once numbered over 200. They were scientists, engineers, and a few security officers who had been studying deep space phenomena when the attack began. "The Galactic Confederation calls it the cleansing," Dongwu said quietly. 7 different alien species working together to wipe us out completely. They say we spread too fast, that we're too violent, too dangerous to exist alongside peaceful civilizations. Young Engineer Park raised his hand. "How many of us are left?" Dr. Minho consulted his tablet. "Based on our long-range scans and the few signals we've intercepted, maybe 3,000 humans in the entire galaxy. Maybe less." The number hit the room like a physical blow. 3,000 out of 40 billion. The math was too horrible to fully understand. "They think they've won," Communications Officer Lee said bitterly. "The aliens are already celebrating. I intercepted their victory broadcasts. They're calling us extinct." Dongwu stood up slowly. Through the conference room's viewport, he could see distant explosions as the last human ships died in the void. "Let them celebrate," he said. "Let them think we're gone." "What do you mean?" Hai-Jin asked. "We're going to disappear completely. No signals, no communications with anyone outside our group. We'll find the other survivors and bring them together in secret. Then we'll wait." "Wait for what?" Dongwu's eyes were cold as winter space. for our chance to show them what extinct really means. In the months that followed, the surviving humans scattered across the galaxy's edge began to change. The pain of watching their species die had burned away everything soft inside them. Love, mercy, forgiveness. These became luxuries they could no longer afford. They learned to move like shadows through the empty spaces between stars. They studied their enemies with the patience of predators. And in the darkness beyond the galaxy's rim, they began to plan their return. The aliens had tried to erase humanity from existence. Soon, they would learn that some things, once awakened, could never be put back to sleep. Dr. Sujin stepped out of the metal chamber, her legs shaking from the long treatment. The bright lights of the medical bay hurt her new eyes, which could now see in complete darkness. Our skin felt different, tougher, like it was made of something stronger than flesh. When she looked at her hands, the muscles were bigger, and the bones felt like steel under her skin. "How do you feel?" asked Dr. Wanbin, watching her carefully from behind his protective glass wall. His own body showed the signs of the treatments he had taken years ago. His arms were thick with new muscle, and his eyes glowed slightly in the dim light. "Different," Sujin said. Her voice sounded strange, deeper than before. "I can hear the machines in the next room. I can smell the metal in the walls." She took a deep breath and felt her lungs work better than they ever had. "I feel strong." 57 years of building had created something that looked more like a weapon than a home. The surviving humans had welded together old mining ships, research stations, and anything else they could find to make their secret fortress in the main meeting room. Admiral Jihu spread out holographic maps showing the 7 worlds of the Confederation. Red dots marked their military bases, their trade routes, their weakest points. He had been studying these enemies for most of his adult life, learning everything about how they lived and how they could die. The Altarians still used the same communication systems, he explained to the assembled survivors. Sound-based, very sensitive. A sonic pulse at exactly 847 hertz will cause their inner ears to rupture. They'll be deaf and helpless in seconds. People around the table nodded and took notes. These were not the same humans who had once explored the galaxy with wonder and hope. 57 years of hiding and planning had changed them into something colder, something that thought only of revenge. "What about the Zephyrians?" asked Captain Hyan Wu, who commanded one of their attack ships. His body was so enhanced that he could survive in open space for hours without a suit. "Still adapted only for low gravity," Jihu replied. "In normal gravity, they can barely move. In high gravity, their bones break like twigs." He smiled, but it was not a kind expression. "We've built gravity weapons specifically for them." Young Jinwoo sat at the far end of the table, listening to every word. He was 25 years old, but he had never seen Earth or any of the old human worlds. "I'd been born here in the cold space between galaxies, raised on stories of the purge and trained from childhood to be a weapon against their enemies." His eyes were different from the older survivors. Where their eyes showed pain and loss, his showed only cold hunger.
Nice.
He had been genetically designed to be stronger, faster, and smarter than any human who had ever lived. His bones were reinforced with metal. His muscles could tear through steel doors. His brain could process information faster than most computers. "When do we attack?" Jinwoo asked. His voice was calm, but everyone could hear the eagerness underneath. Admiral Jihu studied the young man for a moment. Jinwoo represented everything they had become. He was no longer truly human, but something new, something built specifically for war soon, Jihu said finally. "But first, we need to complete the final phase of our preparations." In the genetic laboratory, Dr. Wanbin worked on the last group of volunteers. The treatment was dangerous and painful, but it was necessary. Normal humans could not survive what they planned to do. They needed bodies that could function in the vacuum of space, minds that could calculate the perfect way to kill their enemies, and hearts that felt no mercy. "The bioenhancement is complete," Wanbin reported to the council. "We now have 1,200 enhanced humans ready for deployment. Each one is equivalent to 50 normal soldiers." The survivors had also built new kinds of weapons during their years in exile, ships that could appear and disappear like ghosts, bombs that could destroy entire cities without leaving a trace. biological weapons designed to target specific alien DNA sequences. Everything was aimed at one goal: making the Confederation species extinct. Just as they had tried to do to humanity in the weapon testing facility, Jinwoo practiced with the new combat suits. The black metal armor made him look like a demon from old Earth stories. He could fly through space without a ship, his enhanced body protected by energy shields. His weapons were built into his arms and could fire different types of death depending on which enemy he faced. Remember, his instructor told him, "We are not conquering them, we are erasing them, just like they tried to erase us." Jinwoo nodded and fired his weapon at a target shaped like an Altarian. The sonic blast would have shattered every bone in the alien's body. He felt nothing but satisfaction as the target exploded. The time of hiding was almost over. Soon the galaxy would learn that humanity had not died in the Purge. They had simply evolved into something far more dangerous than the Confederation had ever imagined. The rescue ship, Golden Wing, found the merchant vessel Prosperity's path floating, dead in space, like a ghost ship. Captain Veltar of the Altarian Navy had seen many accidents during his long career, but this one made his sensitive ears twitch with worry. The ship looked perfect from the outside, with no damage to its hull or engines. "All crew members are dead," reported his medical officer after they boarded the silent vessel. "But there are no wounds, no signs of fighting, they just died at their stations." Captain Veltar walked through the corridors of the dead ship, his large ears picking up every small sound. The Altarians had evolved on a world where hearing was more important than sight, and their ears could detect sounds that other species could not even imagine. This gift had made them excellent traders and diplomats across the galaxy. "Sir, you need to see this," the medical officer called from the bridge. Captain Veltar found him standing over the body of the ship's captain, a young Altarian female, who had been piloting the vessel toward Kepler Station. "Look at her ears," the medical officer said quietly. Captain Veltar bent down and examined the body. What he saw made his own ears flatten against his head in fear. The dead captain's eardrums had been completely destroyed, but not by any accident. The damage was too precise, too careful. Someone had used sound as a weapon, creating exactly the right frequency to kill every Altarian on the ship. Thousands. Of light years away, Sub-Commander Taeyong sat in the intelligence center of Vengeful Dawn, watching screens that showed intercepted communications from across the galaxy. His enhanced eyes could process information faster than any normal human, reading dozens of reports at the same time. "Another one," he said to his team. "Zephyrian mining station on the edge of the Vega system. Entire crew dead, apparently from gravity sickness." But the gravity generators were working perfectly. Analyst Yuzhen looked up from her translation console. She had been born on Earth before the Purge, but the genetic treatments had changed her so much that she barely looked human anymore. Her brain could understand and translate any alien language in seconds. "The Confederation military is getting nervous," she reported. "I'm reading panic in their communications. They're calling it the Shadow Plague, ships and stations dying." With no explanation, Taeyang smiled coldly. "Good. Fear is the first step toward understanding what they did to us." On the other side of the galaxy, Commander Hyan-Su and his strike team approached the Confederation research facility on Proxima 7. Their black biosuits made them invisible to most sensors. Their enhanced bodies allowed them to move through space without ships. They looked like demons floating through the void, their glowing eyes the only sign of life. "Remember the mission?" Hyan-Su whispered to his team through their mental link. "Get the data, eliminate the witnesses, make it look like an accident. We are ghosts. We were never here." The research facility was studying new weapons for the Confederation military. Hyan-Su's team had been watching it for months, learning the schedules of every worker, mapping every corridor and security system. They knew that tonight only 12 researchers would be working the late shift. Hyan-Su's enhanced muscles allowed him to tear through the facility's hull like paper. His team flowed through the opening like liquid shadow, their biosuits adapting to match the color and texture of the walls around them. Dr. Kexenal, a Viridian scientist, was working late Laboratory 7 when the lights went out. He called for security, but no one answered. The emergency lighting flickered on, casting strange shadows that seemed to move on their own. "Hello?" he called into the darkness. "Is someone there?" The shadows moved closer. Dr. Kexenol caught a glimpse of glowing eyes and reached for his communicator. But his hand never made it to the device. 12 minutes later, he was dead, along with every other researcher in the facility. The security recordings would show nothing but equipment failures. The air recycling system had malfunctioned, they would say. A tragic accident that killed everyone inside. The computers that held the research data had been completely wiped. But that would be blamed on the power failures. Hyensu and his team disappeared back into space, carrying with them the stolen files that would help them kill. Even more efficiently. They had struck 47 times in the past year, and each attack had been blamed on pirates, equipment failures, or natural disasters. Back on Vengeful Dawn, Admiral Jihu studied the reports from all their operations. The Confederation was starting to notice the pattern, but they still did not understand what was happening to them. They thought they were dealing with some new kind of space plague or unknown enemy. "They're afraid," he told the assembled council. "For the first time since the Purge, they're experiencing fear. They're starting to understand what it feels like to be hunted." The old humans had been explorers and dreamers, reaching out to the stars with hope and wonder. But these new humans were something different. They were predators, perfectly designed to hunt the species that had tried to destroy them. The galaxy was learning to fear the dark spaces between stars, where shadows moved with purpose and death came without warning. The extinct humans had returned, and they were hungry for revenge. Archaeological specialist Kongmin stepped carefully through the broken corridors of the abandoned human research station. His team had been searching for clues about the recent attacks on Confederation ships, and they had found this old facility floating in the ruins of what used to be called the Sol System. The station was ancient by galactic standards, built more than 50 years ago before the humans had been wiped out. But as Kongman explored deeper into the facility, he began to realize that everything they thought they knew about the human extinction was wrong. "Commander Yunjae, you need to see this," he called through his communicator, his voice shaking. With excitement and fear, Commander Yunji was exploring the central laboratory when she heard Kongmin's call. Around her, strange machines filled the room like sleeping monsters. Some looked like medical equipment, but others were unlike anything she had ever seen. They seemed to blend living tissue with metal and circuits in ways that should have been impossible. "What is it, Kongmin?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "I found their computer cores. They're still working, running on backup power. Commander, the humans didn't just die in the Purge. Some of them survived, and they've been planning something terrible." Yunji activated one of the computer terminals and watched in horror as files began to appear on the screen. Detailed plans for genetic modification. Blueprints for weapons designed specifically to kill each species in the Confederation. Ship designs that looked more like living creatures than machines. But the worst part was the recordings. Video files, showing humans voluntarily entering the modification chambers, allowing themselves to be changed into something that was no longer entirely human. Their bodies became stronger, their minds became faster, and their hearts became colder. "They've been watching us," Yunji whispered as she read through the tactical files. "For decades they've been studying every weakness we have. Our biology, our technology, our military strategies. They know everything about us." On the main command ship of the expedition, Fleet Admiral Sumin received the reports from the archaeological team with growing terror. She was a veteran of many wars, but nothing had prepared her for this discovery. "How many of them are there?" she asked Commander Yunji through the communication link. "Based on these files, we estimate several thousand enhanced humans operating from hidden bases beyond our galaxy. They call themselves the Vengeful Dawn, and they've spent the last 50 years preparing for war." Admiral Suman studied the evidence that her team had transmitted to her ship. The recent attacks on Confederation vessels had not been random acts of piracy. They had been careful reconnaissance missions, testing defenses and gathering intelligence. "For a larger assault," Admiral, her intelligence officer, said quietly, "if these files are accurate, then every attack we've suffered was just preparation. They've been learning how to kill us more efficiently. Suman felt a chill run through her body. The Confederation had celebrated the extinction of humanity 57 years ago, believing they had eliminated a dangerous threat to galactic peace. But instead of destroying the humans, they had created something far worse. Prepare an emergency. Transmission to the Confederation Council, she ordered. They need to know that the humans are not extinct. They're out there, and they're coming for us. As she began to record her message, proximity alarms suddenly screamed throughout the command ship. The bridge crew scrambled to their stations, trying to understand what was happening. "Admiral, we have contacts approaching from multiple directions," reported the sensor officer. But they weren't there a moment ago. They just appeared out of nowhere. On the main view screen, shapes began to materialize from what had seemed like empty space. Ships, unlike anything in the Confederation database, moved toward them with fluid grace. They looked alive, their hulls pulsing with organic patterns that seemed to breathe. "Raise shields and prepare weapons," Admiral Suman ordered. But even as she spoke, she knew it was too late. The human ships moved faster than anything should have been able to move. They flowed through space like predators closing in on their prey, their weapons charging with energy that made the vacuum itself glow. On the bridge of the lead human vessel, Captain Jae-sung watched the Confederation ship through his enhanced eyes. His body had been so modified that he barely looked human anymore. His skin was pale as starlight, his muscles were reinforced with metal fibers, and his mind could process tactical information faster than any computer. "Open a channel to their command ship," he ordered his crew. "I want them to see what they created." The communication link activated, and Admiral Suman found herself staring at a face that had once been human, but was now something else entirely. Captain Jae-sung's features were sharp and cold, his eyes glowing with an inner light that spoke of genetic modifications beyond imagination. "Hello, Admiral," Jae-sung said, his voice carrying across the void between their ships. "We've been waiting a long time for this moment." Admiral Suman tried to speak, but no words came. The smile on Jae-sung's face was not cruel or angry. It was simply certain, like the expression of a predator that had finally cornered its prey. "You thought you had killed us all?" Jae-sung continued. "But extinction is not so easy to achieve. We survived, we evolved, and we remembered. Every world you burned, every ship you destroyed, every child you murdered, we remembered it all." Human ships began to move closer, their weapons powering up with light that turned the darkness into day. Admiral Suman realized that this was not the beginning of a battle. It was the end of everything the Confederation had built. The Altarian homeworld of Melodia had always been a place of beautiful sounds. The cities were built like giant musical instruments, creating harmony from the wind and weather. But on the day Admiral Kyung-ho arrived, the only sounds were screams. His fleet appeared from empty space like ghosts becoming real. The ships looked alive, their hulls breathing and pulsing with organic patterns that hurt to look at. They moved through the void with impossible grace, ignoring the laws of physics that govern normal vessels. "Begin the symphony," Admiral Kyung-ho commanded from his flagship. His voice was calm, but his enhanced eyes glowed with cold satisfaction. 57 years of planning had led to this moment. The sonic weapons activated across his fleet, sending precisely calculated sound waves toward the planet below. The frequencies were designed specifically for Altarian biology, turning their greatest strength into their weakness. On the surface, millions of aliens collapsed as their sensitive ears ruptured from sounds they could not escape. Supreme Commander Byung-jin watched the attack from the Bridge of Eternal Vengeance, his enhanced body standing perfectly still as chaos erupted around him. Through the view screen, he could see the last Altarian defense fleet trying desperately to fight back, but their ships were already falling silent as the sonic attacks destroyed their crews. "Zephyria has fallen," reported his communications officer. Captain Song-Yi's gravity weapons worked perfectly. The low-gravity species could not survive when we increased their planet's gravity by a factor of 10? Dunjin nodded without emotion. Each world fell exactly as they had planned. each species dying from weapons designed specifically to exploit their biology. The humans had learned patience during their years in exile, and now that patience was paying off. On the surface of a dying Confederation research world, Lieutenant Colonel Na-Young led her infiltration team through the abandoned corridors of a military base. Her biosuit made her nearly invisible, bending light around her like water. Behind her, 12 other enhanced humans moved with the silence of shadows. They found the base commander hiding in his office, trying frantically to send a distress signal to the Confederation capital. Na-Young appeared behind him like a nightmare, becoming real, her enhanced hand crushing his communication device before he could finish his message. "Please," the alien commander begged. "We have families, children." Na-Young's modified face showed no emotion. "So did we," she said simply, and ended his life with mechanical precision. The psychological warfare had been as important as the physical attacks. Across the galaxy, Confederation survivors told stories of humans who could walk through vacuum without protection, of ships that appeared from nowhere and vanished like bad dreams. The enhanced humans had become living legends of terror. Commander Daejung stood on the ruins of the Confederation capital, watching the last government buildings burn. The final assault had taken exactly 47 minutes, 1 minute for each. Human world destroyed during the purge. It had been a symbolic gesture. But symbols mattered when you were trying to send a message to the universe. "All military installations have been destroyed," reported his tactical officer. "Civilian evacuation ships are fleeing toward the outer rim. Should we pursue?" Dorjun considered the question. His enhanced mind could calculate exactly how many ships were escaping and where they would likely go. But hunting down every last survivor was not the point of this operation. "Let them run," he decided. "Let them carry our story to whatever corner of the universe they hide in." Captain Song Yi commanded the orbital forces that surrounded the dying capital world. Her ships formed a perfect sphere around the planet, ensuring that no one could escape without permission. But she was not interested in preventing escape. She wanted witnesses. The fleeing Confederation leaders would tell other species what they had seen. They would speak of humans who had evolved beyond normal biology, of weapons that defied understanding, of a species that had answered genocide with extinction. Fear would spread faster than any fleet could travel. In the months that followed, enhanced humans, like Colonel Min-young, established monitoring stations throughout what had once been Confederation space. These outposts were hidden in asteroid fields and dead systems, watching for any sign that the alien species might try to return. Ma-young stood in the command center of her station, studying sensor readings from across the galaxy. Her enhanced senses could process information from a dozen different monitoring devices at once, tracking ship movements and communication signals across thousands of light years. "Any contacts?" asked her second-in-command. "Nothing significant," Min-young replied. "A few refugee ships heading toward the outer galaxies, some scattered colonies trying to rebuild. But no organized military response. The Confederation was broken, its member species scattered to the cosmic winds, where once there had been a mighty alliance of 7 civilizations. Now there were only refugees and survivors carrying tales of terror. The enhanced humans had become something beyond mere conquerors. They were living mythology, the dark legends, that parents would tell their children to explain why the spaces between stars were no longer safe. They were the answer to the question of what happened when a species tried to commit genocide and failed. The galaxy belonged to humanity now, but not the humanity that had once reached for the stars with hope and wonder. This was a different species entirely, one built from pain and patience and the absolute certainty that some crimes could never be forgiven. In the endless night between stars, the enhanced humans waited and watched, ready to ensure that no one would ever again try to erase them from existence. They had found their place in the universe at last, not as explorers or diplomats, but as the things that made other species afraid of the dark.